ARY Rosenbaum here with another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. This week's topic, we're going to talk about payroll provider 401k TPAs and why they are a convenience trap. Always going with my annual article about 401k TPAs who also happen to be payroll providers and the problems that ensue. First things first, go to that 401ksite.com for further information on the National Virtual Conference. Available to sign up for free. It'll be out in February, 2 days, as we've been doing it ever since 2021. The event started after the idea of me to have a national conference at Disney World, and of course, that was the week of COVID. So have not been doing a in-person convention ever since. And then if you look at what's going on in the business, a lot of these annual events went bye-bye. People like to stay home and all that kind of stuff. So use the virtual event to build up interest in the live events. Hopefully we do 2 to 3 next year. Schedule will be coming out in August. We'll figure out where we're going to go. And try to build interest in the live events. And like I said, National Virtual Conference, sign up for free. If you don't attend, can't make it, it'll be available on YouTube forever. And then, of course, my books are available on Kindle and paperback on Amazon.com. That 401k Plan Provider Handbook, as well as Full Circle. So let's get to the topic at hand. I've been having my own practice since 2010, and within a few months, I decided to write an article about payroll provider TPAs. And I've written an annual one since. Some are just, slight revisions of earlier articles. This one's kind of a new one, but with the same idea behind it. Now, I'm always allowed to change my mind, and I've changed my mind over the years. I remember as a kid not liking Chinese food, and as an adult it was one of my favorite things until my health was being compromised by white rice and all that stuff, so I don't eat Chinese food as much anymore. I just save it for a school where I serve as the counsel for the board, and I eat Chinese food there. I don't eat white rice, and I've always been able to change my opinion over time. For a long time, I'm sure people know that I didn't like producing TPAs. I didn't like producing TPAs because back before fee disclosure, they would pocket the revenue sharing and not tell the client. Obviously, through fee disclosure, that view has certainly changed, but the one thing that has been consistent is I still do not like the role of payroll providers doing TPA work. And when I say payroll providers, I'm not talking about the local payroll provider out Long Island. There used to be one that owned the TPA, and it was always funny. I was good friends with the salesperson, and anytime I was speaking at an event and I was talking about the subject, one was an Empower TPA forum, and then the other one was a DCIO invited me to speak out in Long Island at a hotel. Every single time I would talk about it, he would walk out. I don't, obviously I don't take offense to it. If I worked for a payroll provider TPA and I was a salesperson, I probably would walk out as well. But the fact of the matter is that people over the years reached out to me, and I just have never been impressed with ADP and Paychex. Plan sponsors were always sold on convenience. It sounds great on paper, but having that convenience in retirement plan administration really masks complexity rather than eliminating it. What appears seamless on the surface can conceal operational gaps that only show up when something goes wrong. And while I don't get many referrals, I don't get any referrals from ADP and Paychex, I certainly get referrals to clean up the mess once the client fires them. And, it's all about, the sales pitch is always about integration. It's seamless. It's perfect. We have 360 integration with payroll. If it was such a big deal for ADP and Paychex, they wouldn't be selling it and offering that ability to, empower and some of the other big providers out there. And what sponsors don't get a seamless integration. What they really get is a system that depends heavily on correct inputs, rigid structures, and limited flexibility. I think in this retirement plan business, administration requires, especially on the small and medium-sized plan business, a lot of hand-holding, and ADP and Paychex don't want to hold hands with their clients. And what you think is going to be seamless is not, because it relies too much on the plan sponsor to do the work. And if the plan sponsor is unaware of the work that they have to do, then something fails. And the fact of the matter is, payroll is not administration. Payroll providers are good at payroll. That's their lane. Retirement plan administration is just not an extension of payroll. Yeah, deferrals are a big part of what 401ks do, and we always need payroll data that's correct. But, it's a whole different business. Eligibility, compensation definitions, all these different nuances, and it doesn't really translate to automated processes. Like I said, their bread and butter is payroll. They see TPA administration as an outgrow of that, but their bread and butter is payroll, and they haven't really shown that they're very good at administration. And automation, these providers provide automation without really understanding. They rely on automation to scale their services, but automation without deep understanding creates blind spots when it comes to plan administration. Plan definition, compensation, anything that's not a safe harbor plan. A system can process data all day long, but it's not going to question whether the data makes sense. And I always bring up the story of the client who was asked who is a key employee, not understanding what the definition of key employee was. So they identified everybody as a key employee, including the cleaning lady who was making $30,000 a year. Needless to say, they were told that they were top heavy. Anybody looking at the numbers would show that the woman who's $30,000 making $30,000 should not be a key employee. But the problem is it's garbage in, garbage out, and they don't question it when the data doesn't make any sense. And obviously, the plan sponsor is not going to do that because the plan sponsor doesn't know what they don't. They don't know what they don't know, and that creates an illusion of set it, forget it. Plan sponsors are often led to believe that once a system is in place, the plan will run itself, and that's really a dangerous assumption. Retirement plans require oversight, periodic review, and an understanding of how the plan operates in practice. When sponsors rely too heavily on the platform, they stop asking questions, and that's when mistakes happen. And when errors surface, so does the confusion. When something breaks, clarity disappears. The payroll side points to the retirement side points back to payroll. The advisor is trying to, be a go-between and trying to translate. And the sponsor, who expected simplicity, is now facing complexity in what they weren't prepared for. And the clock is ticking because many errors carry costs of correcting the error. Especially, ADP tests. You have the option of refunding the money, but if you discover the error too late, you got to write a check for a QNEC. And I've had situations where, plan sponsors call me begging me that they want to sue ADP and Paychex. And good luck, because the contracts are always stacked against the plan sponsor. And there'll never be a response, there's never a claim of responsibility. I just got a check on a screw up from one of the very well-known mutual fund companies. They're paying me to submit a plan to the VCP. I've never seen a situation where the payroll provider fessed up and made a mistake and was going to write a $7,000 check, including the user fee for that stuff. But, all credit to the mutual fund company that did. Fiduciary responsibility doesn't disappear. One of the biggest misunderstandings out there is responsibility. Plan sponsors often assume that by using their payroll provider, they reduce their risk. In reality, they've often shifted operational responsibility without really having reduced their fiduciary exposure. When I worked at that Fakakta law firm, Meyer Swazing Klein, we had a medical device company, I think they were, and they didn't have an advisor on the plan, but they brought in, because it was got $10 million in the plan, they brought in one of their fiduciary guys who's not a fiduciary, and he's like, I think you guys should have a small cap fund, but I'm not a fiduciary, so you can't rely on my advice. Why a $10 million plan did not have a financial advisor, I don't know, but it was the client of the managing attorney, so I didn't ask many questions when you're a lowly associate. But the duty to ensure the plan is operated correctly still rests with the plan sponsor. And they don't understand that. They don't understand that ADP and Paychex really have no say in how things are going. And they're never responsible. And large payroll provider TPAs depend on standardized processes. That's how they manage the volume. They always bring in so much business, and they always lose so much business. It's like a high churn rate. I don't know what the number is, but I believe that the average client isn't as long as probably a really good TPA, like a Fidelity, like at a Census. I don't think that I don't think the numbers are the same. Retirement plans are not standard. You can't really make a standardized process. Yeah, you have standardized prototypes, but not every plan is alike. Businesses change, employer population shift, acquisitions happen, compensation structures change and evolve. Standardized systems struggle with these changes. They handle the average case well, but they falter when a plan requires customization or nuance. Listen, plans that have a weird compensation definition, which is a lot of plans out there, that's a big screw up. Support models for these payroll providers are built for volume, not depth. When issues arise, plan sponsors have a support structure designed for efficiency but not expertise. Calls are routed, tickets are open, responses are templated. But the person on the other end may be helpful, but they are often constrained by the system they operate within. Complex issues take time to escalate, and by the time they reach someone with deeper knowledge, the problem has usually grown. And I remember working with a plan sponsor. I've told the story 1,000 times. Back when the deferral number was 12 grand, was the 402G limit. The owner of the company had to give it back $10,500 of her deferrals. This was a client for many years of mine. They put out the toys for some of the Happy Meals, not for McDonald's, but for some of the other companies. You'd be surprised who actually offers Happy Meals. I think Subway offers Happy Meals. But anyway, what happened was they didn't bother to tell the client, oh, by the way, maybe you should have a safe harbor plan design. But even worse than that, by the way, if you write a $7,000 check for a QNEC, your $10,500 deferral is okay. And there was never one person at one of the payroll providers that you could talk to and discuss the situation. It was always like this team approach. And, that's the problem. And the cost of getting it wrong is huge. I got 2 calls within the last 2 or 3 months. Everybody wants to sue the payroll provider. And I'm like, you know what? As Clint Eastwood said in the Deadpool, you're shit out of luck. The contractors, it's just not worth it for me to even look at the problem. You're going to have to fix it yourself. You're the plan sponsor. And they do a great job of disclaiming any responsibility. Mistakes in the retirement plans are not minor inconveniences. Missed deferrals, incorrect eligibility, determinations, or failed compliance tests can require corrective contributions, notices, and filings, and it costs money, time, and credibility. And what you thought was a cost-effective solution is now opened you to, paying ARY, 5 figures to fix this problem. And, over time, I've learned to appreciate producing TPAs. They do a pretty good job of handling the plan, even though they're the advisor on the plan. But with this payroll provider TPA model, I think accountability is a missing piece. There's a clear point of accountability with a producing TPA. There's someone who knows the plan, understands it, and all that stuff. And there isn't with a payroll provider TPA. And plan sponsor needs to really ask harder questions. How is eligibility tracked when employees don't fit standard patterns? What happens when payroll is incomplete or inconsistent? Who's going to review entry dates and all that kind of stuff? One of the potential clients who called me, and I can't help you, is I think it was dealing with the long-term part-time, and they didn't tell these people that they should be able to defer. So you have a missed deferral opportunity, which could be expensive, except for people that might not have deferred at all if they were given the opportunity. Convenience should not replace oversight, and that happens too often with payroll provider TPAs. There's nothing wrong with wanting simplicity. Plan sponsors have business to run, but the problem is simplicity should not come at the expense of oversight. The more automated the system, the more important it is to understand the limitations. Blind reliance on any platform, no matter how large or well marketed, creates risk. And, I've changed my opinions on lots of things over the years. Listen, they want to eat broccoli, and, listen, I was 18, was trying to lose weight, and broccoli became my friend. Same with a lot of other foods. I remember never wanting to eat fish. I thought it was disgusting. And then you try it and you're like, wow, where's this been all my life? And I haven't changed much on my view about payroll provider TPAs. The underlying issues have never really changed. The model still prioritizes scale over substance, efficiency over expertise, and convenience over accountability. There's never been a commitment to being a good TPA. And plan sponsors don't need to abandon technology or integration, but they do need to approach it with clear eyes. The platform you choose will not eliminate your responsibility, and it may introduce risks that you really didn't anticipate. So hiring your payroll provider is not exactly the greatest idea in my mind. The goal when hiring a TPA isn't to find the easiest solution, it's to find the right one, the right fit. And in retirement plans, the right solution is rarely the one that promises to do everything for you without your actual involvement. That's not how things work in the retirement plan space. So that concludes this episode of that 401k podcast. Like I said, go to that 401ksite.com, sign up for our national virtual event in February. I think it's February 4th to the 5th, 2027. I can't believe it's already 2027. I remember as a kid looking at I was bored out of my mind every Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur at this synagogue that I didn't like attending. And you look at the dates on the calendar and I'm like, oh, wow, this is what the date is going to be in 2000. And I'm like, wow, how am I going to be like in the year 2000? Well, now 2027 is right around the corner. It just blows my mind. So sign up free. We've got articles there at 401ksite.com as well. And of course, Kindle paperback versions of my books. All 4 books are available for Kindle. The last 2 books are available for Kindle and paperback. Actually, I think the last 3. The greatest 401k book sequel ever, I think, is the second book. The third book is Full Circle. And of course, the last book is that 401k Plan Provider Handbook. The first book is called 401k. And please, you love the podcast, you love the books, all that kind of stuff. And tune in next week for another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. Take care. Bye.